Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for joining me for another episode of Ink and Chat. And I have tonight Miss Stacey Woodson joining us this evening. And Miss Woodson is a dietitian, nutritionist, and entrepreneur. She is a counselor, speaker, and author on the topics of nutrition and wellness. She loves teaching children about healthy eating and introducing them to new foods. The Princess Prince of Picky Eating Tries New Foods are the first books in her Delicious and Nutritious Series. Good evening. How are you?
I am well. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I
Yes.
really appreciate you taking the time to bless us this evening. So we just gonna jump right into it. Come on, tell us a little bit more about your book. Show us the cover of your book if you have it there in front of you.
I should have some handy.
Okay.
So as you mentioned, I am the author of The Princess and Prince of Picky Eating. So it's the same food, just a different lead character.
Mm-hmm.
Which was inspired by my family. So this is loosely based off of my family. And I wanted to write this book because one, I'm a dietitian and nutritionist by trade. And so I had and still have a picky eater. And I said, you know what, it would be really interesting or really fun to tell a story about a picky little eater that doesn't like to try new foods. But at the end of the book, she realizes that trying new foods can be fun and teaching nutrition along the way.
Okay.
And so that's exactly what I did with my books. And I will show you.
And that's actually important because kids can be very picky. Okay.
Yes. So
Yes.
this is
Oh,
it.
that's beautiful illustration. Beautiful
Thank you.
illustration.
So once again, this is me. This is me and my daughter. Um, and so it's a really fun read. I have throughout the illustrations, I've hidden some maps of we talk about foods from different parts of the world.
Yes.
So I've hidden some maps in the illustrations that often people don't notice to talk about, to touch on geography.
Okay.
Lots of alliterations, so the kids like reading it. And there was one other thing I was going to say. Oh, repeating phrases, so the kids love that too.
Okay.
So
That's
the tagline of the main character is "No, thank you, not today, no way."
okay. Well, that is good. That is good, especially to kind of also give them some other things to kind of look for in the story as they're reading to kind of, get them to pay attention even more as they're going along in the story.
Right.
That is great. Now, who or what inspired you to write this book?
So as I mentioned, I can't get seem to get it in the camera. My picky eater,
Yeah.
she really inspired me to write this story. However, I have to say that it was a COVID project for me because I did not know how to write a book. So
Okay.
I came up with the idea for the book, a rough idea for the book, several years ago. So my daughter is currently 8, and I would
Okay.
say about two when she was about 2 or 3, maybe. She stopped eating all the foods that she used to eat. She wasn't a picky eater originally, and then one day all she would eat was beans, like black beans, like that's it.
Wow.
Um, and we're just like, what is going on? And so then we started becoming what I like to call flexitarian, and like we ate all these meatless meals because I was not going to cook separate meals for my family
Right.
to feed her. And so as a dietitian, a meatless meal isn't a big thing for me. I'm experimental when it comes to food. So I had this idea. I was like, it would be really funny to write like a melanated version of green eggs and ham is what I like to think of this
Yes.
as.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, that would be so fun, and I could throw nutrition facts in there, and it would be so cute. But then I'm just like, I don't know how to write a book, like, so whatever. Table that, and then many years later, I meet a few mom friends, and one
Mhm.
of them is writing a book. And I was just, and I remember telling her, like, oh my gosh, I want to write a book. I don't know how to write a book, blah, 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 blah. And, we just talk about books back and forth. And then one day during the pandemic, she tagged me, and I don't even think she actually remembered doing this, but she tagged me in a free children's book masterclass by, I
Okay.
don't know if you're familiar with this author, Crystal Swain Bates.
Yes, I've seen her. Actually, I'm in one of her groups. Actually,
Yes. And so I took that master class and on Facebook, and I was blown away. I was like, I can completely do this. And that's how my book came to fruition.
and you know what? And it's really surprising a lot of times that we think that we can't do something, but we absolutely can. When we have the resources and knowledge to be
Yeah,
able to move
absolutely.
forward. So that was great that saying that, not even knowing that she was actually pushing you along to make this dream come true as writing your book. So that is awesome. That is really awesome. So now, and what age group is your book for?
So my book is, I say the sweet spot is about third grade,
Okay.
but between like 7 and 10. I purposely wrote the book to have vocabulary building.
Okay.
So it's definitely not a beginning reader for like independent reading.
Yes.
However, the little ones like it to be read to them. So
Right.
I always say, even though I'm saying it's for, like the grade schoolish kids, the little ones love it too.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure the illustrations is what's going to capture their attention, and it's
Hmm.
also a good piece to kind of open up and have dialogue with the little ones as well. So
Yes. And one of the things that I intentionally did is I put a glossary in the back of the book. And so once again, I'm a strong believer in you have to show children these big words and introduce them to things. Often we're afraid to introduce them, saying it's too sophisticated, they're not going to understand. But I don't come from that school of thought. So I was like, I want to drop these big words here, explain what it means, and
yeah,
then if they have further questions, the caregivers, the parents, the teachers, they can refer to the glossary, and then that could be a teachable moment
yes.
about that topic.
Yes, exactly. I totally agree with that. Totally agree. Now, just tell me a little bit more about your writing journey. As you went on this journey to write your book, and did you have things that kind of helped inspire you to write? I know we all have our moments where we get stuck and we have writer's block. So tell us a little bit more about your writing journey.
Well, I will say that I learned that I don't really like to write unless I have something to say. So that was like the biggest piece. Like, oh, now I'm a published author and I don't really enjoy writing. Um, but so I told you about the masterclass.
Yes.
And so I was in this 5-day masterclass, and everything was, at least with this book, was pretty much fast tracked. It was like, it was um, divinely orchestrated. I'll say that because although I had a kind of an idea in my mind what I wanted the book to be like, um, I didn't have it laid out. So I'd always thought of the beginning of the book, but I didn't know how I would get this in a realistic way to get this picky eater to actually try these new foods. Like,
Right.
kids are, if they're picky eaters, they don't want any parts.
Yeah.
And so I took this master class, and part of the master class was like writing out our script,
Mhm.
and during the 5 days I just wasn't able to do it. But about 2 weeks had passed, and that's it. I just have to get an end to this story. It doesn't have to actually be the end to my story, but I have to bring this story to completion. Just feel like I finished it, and then you can edit it as much as you want.
Yes.
And so after about that 2 week period, I was like, I'm not going to sleep until I get an end to this story. And I stayed up until 4 a.m. that day,
Wow.
but I got an end. And it's not the end that it is now, but that's what I needed. I needed to feel like I have a finished product that then I can edit.
Yes. And sometimes that it is, and because I know myself, I've had those nights where it's like, until I complete this, I can't rest. I'm going to toss and turn, whatever the case may be, until I'm finished. So that's just part of this. That's part of this process for sure. And most people, some people will tell you that it's easy to do, but I didn't find it easy to do as a self-publisher. It was tough, just going through the process. And as I told someone before, as you're on this journey, you're always going to be a forever student when it comes to self-publishing. You're always going to find different things that you didn't realize that when you wrote the first book, you get ready to write the second book, it's going to be something different that you didn't realize that you really needed to do before. So it's always a never ending learning experience. So
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you got to the finish line, you know. So
Yeah.
hopefully in your next book, because I'm pretty sure you're brewing up something else in your mind, even though you say you don't like writing.
Oh, no, no. But remember, I said that unless I'm inspired.
And that you
So,
said yes. So
so
I'm sure that you've been inspired by something else.
yes, I have a my next book, which is nearing completion very, very soon.
All right. Good.
So first, I already knew in the beginning that I was going to have multiple books. As I mentioned, I wrote this book about my daughter. Well, I have
Mhm.
three kids. And
Okay.
so I knew that I was going to have to write at least
At
three
least three
books.
books.
You can't write a book about one child
And
and
not
the
the
other two
other.
are looking at you like, what?
Yes. Yeah. Now tell us a little bit more about your illustrator and how you found your illustrator, and what exactly drew you to this particular person.
So I found my illustrator on Upworks, believe it or not. So completely freelance. I've never seen her face to face. We haven't even had a Zoom. So we
Yes.
did everything online. But I knew that she would be the illustrator for me because I was looking at her portfolio and there was this illustration
Hmm.
of another book that is now published. And that book, idea, the it's about a Benin queen mother.
Oh, okay.
I was like, these illustrations are amazing. They're simply breathtaking. And I was like, I know she can bring my work to life. And so I did test illustrations, and she nailed it.
Okay. That is great. And people, it's so many different ways that you can find amazing illustrators. And Upwork is one of the ways that you can be able to find something. You just have to continue to search. And I know it's also a scary process when you don't know them, and you're
Hmm.
wondering whether or not, like, am I gonna get scammed or whatever. But this is just one of those journeys that you have to just trust and believe that everything is gonna work itself out.
Yeah.
You have to trust and believe it, because it's really tough out here. But that's awesome. That's awesome. It's always good to have a connection with who you have working with you when it comes to illustrations and things like that. So now, tell me, a little bit more about why diversity in your books. Why is that important to you?
Oh, well, that's actually my reason why. So I have three children, and my oldest is 10.
Hmm.
And if you would have told me prior to her being born that I would be an entrepreneur in any way, I would tell you, absolutely not. I want to go to work, and when I leave work, I don't want to think about work again. But when my oldest child was born, she had eczema,
Mm.
and my entrepreneurship journey started with making body care products, which I still do from time to time just because I want to have them in my house, but don't do it as much, and definitely don't push those products. But I started making, well, I was spending all this money on all these expensive skincare products.
Yes.
And I also happened to, as a new mom, when I was pregnant, I became natural. And so I was watching a lot of tutorials, like hair tutorials, and I came across this tutorial to make body butter, and that just changed the trajectory of my life. So I started making this body butter for my daughter. It was beautiful. And I was like, this is great. This is great. And then I liked it so much I started making other things. And once again, this was just for my home. Like, and as a dietitian, you can imagine I care what I eat, what I put in my
Right.
body. Well, what I put on my body is now super important, especially for my children.
Yes.
And so um then I'm having another child, and because everybody's like, you should sell these things, you should sell these things, and I'm like, no, no, I don't want to do that. But now I'm having another child, and I need some extra cash, I need a side hustle. So I start selling my body care products, and then so now I have a third child, and I'm spending all this money whenever I see a character on a book bag or a shirt that represents my children. Like, I'm running to Target or a children's place, and like I got the idea. I'm like, why am I giving these big corporations all my money? Why can't I do this myself?
Hmm.
And so then I started my children's clothing line, Melanated Magic Tees.
Okay.
And so when I thought about the book, I'm like, this is another really important thing, is that I need to not only talk about nutrition, I need to represent a family of color in their beautiful, diverse glory. So I
Yeah.
was very intentional. My book doesn't mention that, it's a family of color. I don't mention it at all. So it's a book that can apply to anybody. But we are rocking Afro puffs. We're wearing head wraps. We're wearing dashikis. Um, and so I wanted to make sure that children that identify with those things, they feel seen, and children that might not identify, it's normalized. Like, oh, I see people wear dashikis, it's not a big deal. I see people wear Afro puffs, and that's normal.
And
So
that's
that's super
beautiful.
important.
That's very, very beautiful because we, as African American women and men, you see our hair in different ways, whether it's short, natural, colored, afro, long down the back, whatever the case may be. It's a variety of things. And we most definitely want our children to know, no matter if your hair is straight or kinky, that it's still beautiful. And so that is wonderful that you have that in your books because we need to be able to see that. And even from the head wraps into the dashikis, that's just part of our culture and
Mhm.
we need to display it more. It needs to be displayed so much more. So that is beautiful. That is very beautiful. Now, what book in any genre, whether it's children's or adult book, that really has inspired you in some way or touched you that you really love to read? That you've read, maybe you even read it twice or three times before.
So the most recent book that I've enjoyed, like an adult book, is Children of Blood and Bones.
Mm,
I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's the author described it as, what did she describe it as? I think Harry Potter meets oh, it was something else, but it was a black show. So it's
okay.
like a mythical, not even mythical, but like magical Wakanda.
Okay. I have to check that one out.
Yeah, so that would be my most recent like read for pleasure. As far as children's books, there's so many. I have a problem with collecting children's books. I
I'm with you. I'm with you.
and being a children's book author only makes it worse.
Yes.
Because then you have author friends and you're just like, I gotta buy your book too. I
Yes.
gotta
But
support.
it's so amazing when you see them. It's like I need to support them because at one point in time in our lives, and I don't know about you, but I know when I was growing up, I didn't see this. So now that I see, I can walk into a store and I can just see a character that I wish I could have seen on the front of a book when I was a child. So and it's like, oh wow, I need to pick up this book just because.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't even I can't even begin to think of like the books that we read on a regular rotation. And but I do have to say, I do have to give a shout out to Green Eggs and Ham because it really was the inspiration for my book. Be it no matter what you think of Dr. Seuss, because I have mixed feelings. Uh,
Yes, I think we all do. But it was
but
inspirational to a lot of us as children, you
yes,
know?
it was, and that even the cadence of my book was
Yeah.
kind of following Green Eggs and Ham.
Yeah, okay, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. So now besides your own book, um, well, you just basically answered. So Green Eggs and Ham. I was saying, besides your own book, what book, the kind of like children's book have you read? But Green Eggs and Ham. Is there any other one that you read as a child that really kind of touched you that you can reflect on now as an adult?
I loved Berenstein Bear books. I love them. I used to feel like I was in bear country. I felt like when I read one of them, I was just transported into a different place. So I had the whole collection. I still have some of my original books. Um,
Oh wow!
yeah, with my little cursive
Notes that you
handwriting in
had
the
in
front.
them. Beautiful.
This book belongs to little tab that was always in the front. And as I got older, the Babysitters Club was another one that
Yes.
I was a huge fan of.
Yes, and those books, again, like I said, even though I don't think that we paid attention to it as much as children, because I think a lot of times our parents was like, wanted to make sure that we just had things to read, and I don't think we really paid attention to that. It didn't really have characters that we identify with, or our skin tone. I think we just got into the story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as adults, when we look at it and then we reflect back, like, we didn't have any books with characters of color that we could actually identify with, that reflected, our skin tone, and our culture and the things that we deal with. But I'm still grateful for those books, no
Yeah.
matter what, because I learned a lot from them. And it was a good reading source. It kept me entertained as a child. So
No, I absolutely agree. But you're right. Looking back on those books, like now that I have children that are reading some of these classics,
yes.
I'm just like, wait, what? This is
Right.
so dry. Like my daughter just got done reading Ramona,
Uh-huh. Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
she loved it. But I'm just like, oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, and of course, we loved it because we didn't have other options.
right.
We didn't have other options, so it was good for us. But now that we see that we have a plethora of options from a lot of Black authors out here now, especially more in the self-published realm, and it's like, oh wow, what happened to these stories when I was a kid? you know. But I'm so thankful that we have them now for our children, and generations to come, most definitely. So now, as on your self-publishing journey here, what do you see how at any point that the writing process, changed for you in the way you think, and as you go into this next phase of your series, anything that you would do a little differently from the way you done with your first book?
Um, editing, editing.
Yes, very important.
Yes. So I will say with the first book, I did not know that there was different types of editing.
Oh man, I learned a lot after I published my first one as well. It's a lot
Mhm.
of different editors.
Yeah. So I had it developmentally edited, and then I had it edited for something else, and then even I had it sent it to the illustrator, and I was like, I think I want to change some things to make it a little bit clearer. Um, or just even rearranging the text to make sure it aligns better with the illustrations, because in children's books the illustrations mean so much. And
Yes,
sitting back and having my kids like, okay, what do you think about this? And if they have questions, I'm just like, all right, it's time to go back to the drawing board, because you guys know what this story is about. So if
yes,
you have questions, other kids are going to have questions.
yes, and that's important. I think it's good that you involved your kids and got feedback, because they most definitely are going to be able to help you. You'll know whether or not if other children will enjoy it as well. So now, tell the people on how they can be able to find your book, or where you are on social media and those type of things.
Sure. So you can find my books if you want an autograph copy, which is what I recommend. You can find me on my website, which is Stacey, Stacey Woodson, WOODSON.com. And so there you can find my two first books, The Prince of Picky Eating Tries New Foods and The Princess of Picky Eating Tries New Foods, and the accompanying activity books. So I have an activity book that goes with each one of them. You can
Okay.
also find my pre-order book, my next book, which is called Grow, Eat, Repeat, A Love Letter to Black Eyed Peas, which is co-authored with my oldest daughter.
Oh wow.
Yes. But the books that have already been published, you can find them anywhere that books are sold. So Amazon, they're available, barnesandnoble.com, target.com. So wherever books are sold, you can find them. As far as the social media set, um, it's a double-edged sword with me. I don't love it a ton, but I frequent Instagram the most. And so my Instagram account isn't just an author account, it's a general mothering. I'm a homeschool mom, so mothering, authorship, homeschooling. And so you can find me at Mothering While Melanated.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Now, how did you come up with that mothering while melanated?
I mean,
Is
that's
it
what I
just
do. I mother and I'm melanated, and that and that is how I look through, like, I view the world through that lens. And unfortunately, I can't change it even if I wanted to. So,
it, that is
um,
so very true.
when I first started the Instagram handle, though, I really wanted to. We do a lot of things that are quote unquote not common in the Black community.
Hmm.
So I really wanted to let other people know that you can mother any way that you want.
Yes.
And my kids play hockey, we go skiing, we sail, we do all these different things that a lot of people of color don't do.
Yeah.
So
There's nothing wrong with that. It's
thank
so important to have exposure to several different activities. We most definitely have to get our children out of thinking, especially our boys, out of thinking that basketball, football, those are the only sports that they can really get into, that they can be successful in. So that is really important to expose them to, skiing and diving and sailing. All those different things are so important because if they don't try them, how do they know if they like them or not?
Right, exactly. And I wanted other people that might not have that mindset or might not have even thought of that to be able to see people that look like them doing these things outside. We spend a lot of time outside. We grow our own food, um, do all kinds of cool stuff. So I wanted to showcase that.
Well, that is amazing. That is amazing. Now, do you have any final thoughts for our people before we wrap up here tonight?
The only thing that I would say is that, so obviously my books, the series is Delicious and Nutritious. So all of my books will have a different feel. So the first one is about picky eating, but about nutrition in general. The second one is a very heartfelt story about a little girl learning why growing food is so important, specifically in her family. And the third book that I have not started writing, I have outlined, will be about that will be my son's book. And it'll just be, it's serious boy energy. The little boy
Okay.
doesn't want to eat vegetables and he has to go on a journey to figure out why they're cool. But all of these things are really important for me, for kids to be excited about
Hmm.
nutrition, to try eating new foods, because that's another thing, especially in our community. If you didn't grow up eating it, you don't want to try it.
Yes.
Um, and so, really introducing children to healthy eating and new foods is so important to me, because at the end of the day, they're going to grow up and be our next generation, and then they're going to teach future generations. So, it's so important to establish what I like to call generational health.
Yes. Now, let me ask you one other question before we wrap up. So
Sure.
now, your children. So just say my grandson. He's very picky eating
Mhm.
stuff. So how do you recommend to introduce them to something else when they're, like you said, picky eaters? Um, just being able to get them to try it. Like, what fun activity do you kind of create to make them want to try something different?
So there's a lot of things that I could say,
Hmm.
but I think the two easiest things would be is getting them involved.
Hmm.
So whether it's in the preparation, this is why I'm a huge fan of growing food too, because if you watch it from, even if you buy a seedling from a
Yes.
store, when you watch it grow, you're emotionally invested in it. I'm sorry,
Right.
how to turn this down. So you're emotionally invested in this food, and so they're more likely to try it. The
Okay.
other thing that I would say, and these are the two things that I was initially going to say, is one, that often will offer a child a food, they won't eat it, maybe you offer it again, and then you're just like, oh, my child doesn't eat this. Well, unfortunately, we're doing them a disservice, because it takes many, many, many experiences with the food.
Hmm.
It's all about being familiar. So the more familiar you are with a task, the easier it is for that task, the more comfortable you are. So it can take up to 15 experiences with a food. So
Mm.
keep providing that food. They might not eat it, but it's not scary when they've seen it over and over again.
Right.
My daughter's about to come in here. Almost done, babe. And then the other thing that I would say, and now I lost my train of thought. I don't remember the last. Oh, is the portions. So
Okay.
we serve our kids, we give them this portion that can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So if for instance, it's something like peas that you're trying to offer, try giving one pea, not a
Not a
stack of
whole.
peas. Because
Yeah.
once again, this is a new thing, it's unfamiliar, and it's overwhelming.
Yes.
So scale back the portion sizes.
Okay, that is awesome. That's great. That's actually great tips. That's great tips. Because I know I do try to keep on putting it. He be like, so I just put it, I'll wait a week and put it there again. And I say eventually maybe he'll just be like, okay, I'm gonna give in to it, and actually really just try it. So
Especially if it's just one
yeah, yeah,
or a very small amount.
yes, most definitely. Well, Miss Woodson, I greatly appreciate you joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure having you on and you sharing your journey and your story and telling us more about your children's book. Um, Again, everybody, this is Miss Stacey Woodson. Make sure you go over to her website to be able to learn more about her books, and make sure you get a copy. And again, as always, thank you so much for joining me on another great episode of Ink and Chat with one of our special African American authors. Until next time, it's Sabrina, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye bye.